Hi, I'm Jenny. Welcome to my first vlog. I had been thinking about doing this for a while now and have filmed several different intros, but finally decided to give it a go. I have gone through some life changes in the last few months and moved into this new apartment. But I think the one thing that's remained constant is my love and dedication to poker. So I wanted to share a bit about that side of my life. And also, as you get older, it's harder and harder to keep in contact with close friends and family. And as you can probably tell from the accent, a lot of my friends are back home in Australia, and a lot of my business school friends live in New York. So it's isolating sometimes living out here in Vegas by myself. So this is like a little bit of an outlet for me to share more about my life and keep them updated as well. Sometimes I ask how it's going, and now they can follow along and see if I'm a little richer or a little poorer this week. But yeah, I moved here at the beginning of last year, restarted my poker career. I had been playing on and off for 7 years, but decided to take it a bit more seriously at the beginning of last year. Went back to 1-3 and started from there and slowly built up. Now I predominantly play 5-10, 5-10-20, sometimes a little higher if the games look good. And I mainly play at the Win or Encore, but sometimes I hop around if there's no games over there. And yeah, today it's Friday evening, so I'm gonna go and play a session. I don't know if they would allow me to film in there, so if I'm not allowed, I will come back here and run through some hands. So in this first hand, we are in the cutoff with pocket fours. You'll just have to believe me since I can't seem to get both cards in the shot. Hijack raises to 30. I call 30. Usually a spot I lean towards folding, but the blinds look like recreational plays I'd never seen before, so I flicked it in. Big blind called as well, and we see a flop of 10, 7, 4, 2 spades. So yes, we flop bottom set, a pretty good board for us. The big blind decides to check, hijack checks as well, and we decide to check behind this time. The turn is the 9 of diamonds. Big blind tanks for a bit, then checks, hijack again checks. And with 2 draws out there and no one doing the betting for us, we put in a bet of 60, which is 2/3 pot. Big blind, to our surprise, raises to 220. Hijack folds. Obviously, we are in good shape. Don't really see a need to raise here. And we're also in position, so I decided to just call. And the river is a 4. We hit quads in pretty much the first hand we vlog. Sadly, big blind checks. I choose a bigger bet size here because his range is quite polarized after check raising the turn and then checking the river. There's some nutty hands in there like 10s, 9s, 7s, all boats, but there's also some bluff catches in there like Jack 9 suited and a couple of combos of 10-9 suited. I decided to bet 600 and he tanks for quite a while, but eventually calls. The very next hand we have 9-8 of diamonds in hijack. Low jack raises to 30. We raise to 100, and before you know it, we're seeing a flop 4-way with big blind, hijack, and cutoff all in the running. The flop is 5-4 deuce, 2 diamonds. Not a lot of nutted hands I can rep on this board, plus we're 4-way, so I opt to check. It checks around. Turn is the 3 of hearts, bringing a 4 card straight. Big blind leads for 140. I decide to call. No real reason to raise here. Cutoff raises to 400. Kind of a small raise. Doesn't seem like a bluff very much. Big blind calls. Feels like he probably has maybe a diamond draw or an ace, and for me it's probably an easy fold situation. But since big blind was kind of a recreational player and the more likely villain to have higher diamonds, I figure I'll be careful on the river in case he bets big. If he doesn't, that's kind of good. I thought I had enough direct odds to call with the pot being so big already, so I called. And the river is an offsuit 7. Doesn't help us at all, and apparently didn't help big blind either. He checks, I check, cutoff goes all in for a lot, and that's the end of that. The next hand, we have King 8 of hearts in the small blind. There's a limp from early position, button also calls. We decide to punish the limpers and make it 140 from the small blind. The early position player folds, button calls, and we see a flop of Jack 6-3. It's monotone, but it's the wrong suit, so it's all clubs, and I tend to struggle with these spots. My default when I don't know what to do is bet, so I throw out a bet of 100 and get a call, and now we really don't know what to do, so the turn is a 4 of hearts. I decide to check. It just feels like suicide putting any more into this pot. Button puts out a bet of 250 and I quickly fold. In this hand, we have the straddle on. I have ace king of clubs in middle position. I open to 50. I face a re-raise from the cutoff to 150, who has around 2k in a stack. He seems to be a quieter, older gentleman, so I'm kind of wary about this and want to just call, but then there's this voice inside me telling me don't be a... So I raise to 450 and he calls. The flop is 865, all clubs, so we flop the nuts except for any strange straight flushes out there. He checks. I decide to slow play and check behind, hoping for no more clubs or action killers. The turn is not a club, but it's still an action killer. It's an offsuit 9, bringing 4 cards to a straight. He checks. I bet 250. He calls, and the river is the 9 of clubs. It's almost impossible he has a boat here. I'm just thinking how I can get more chips in the pot. He checks. I bet 400. And he eventually calls. After I scoop the pot, my opponent flashes kings, no club of course, so I knew I had a bad feeling about his 3-bet pre-flop. In the next hand, we have ace king offsuit in the cutoff. I open to 50, big blind calls, and the straddle calls. The flop is 3-4-4 rainbow. I bet 60 for a bit of protection and value, I guess. We get 1 call from the big blind and the straddle folds. I have mixed feelings about seeing this turn, but anyway, it's the 7 of diamonds. He checks. I don't see any real reason to bet here, so I check behind. And the river is an ace, which is great for us, obviously. He checks again. We bet 90 and he folds. We now get moved to the main game, and not long after I pick up ace queen off on the button. Cutoff opens to 50. I raise to 160. He re-raises to 400, which is not ideal, but I think cutoff versus button where I'm in position, I can still call. I think I'm gonna have to check that later. Anyways, we call. The flop is Jack 5-3 rainbow. Not much help for us. He decides to bet 300. I don't think this is a good spot to float, especially because we're still behind against ace king if he decides he wants to bluff that. So we fold. We're card dead for a little bit, and then we pick up ace 6 of spades and the straddle. Someone from early position opens. I decide to just call. Flop is 9-7 deuce, 2 spades, so we flop a flush draw and some backdoor straight possibilities. I decide to check. Early position fires a bet of 1/3 pot. I decide to call. Obviously a spot where you can predominantly raise, but I decide to call this time. Turn is the 4 of diamonds. We check, and he fires out a pretty big bet of 300, which is about 1.5x pot. At this stage, we're probably not going anywhere with our nut flush draw, so we decide to call. Obviously not enough direct odds, but just hoping that he fires away on a spade river. Also helps that the villain is a bit of an aggressive reg. So we call and we see a river card, which is an ace of clubs. If he decides to bet again, I'm not exactly sure what I would do. I think I would lean towards calling at this point. But luckily for us, he decides to check after we check first. So we end up winning with an ace. Now, this hand was probably one of my biggest blunders of the night. I have Jack 9 of clubs in small blind, I raise it to 60, and the straddle calls. The flop is ace, queen, deuce with 2 clubs. This is a really good board for our range, and we want to be betting close to 100% of range, which means we want to bet a smaller size. So I opt for $40 and the straddle calls. Next, we see a turn, the 5 of diamonds, bringing 2 flush draws now. Now we want to up our size a little bit, so we bet about 3/4 pot and straddle calls again. The river is one big brick, so now we want to decide whether we want to bluff or give up. And if anyone knows me, I'm really not good at the latter. In fact, not knowing when to give up is probably one of my biggest leaks. So I decide to put in a bet of 450, close to pot. It works. He immediately shows me ace jack offsuit, and I immediately show him jack 9 clubs. In any case, I check the spot later, and this is really not a spot we want to be bluffing. We should be checking here a lot. It's a very big EV loss for us to bluff, unless we bluff really big. So this was definitely a blunder on my part. So a few hands later, we're heads up against the same opponent again. This time we have pocket jacks in hijack. We raise it to 50. He makes it 150 on the button and makes a comment regarding whether I clicked record or not. And he thinks that if I clicked record, then I'm more likely to call a 3-bet, which may or may not be the case. I think I tend to just hit record anytime I'm in a hand. But in any case, I decide to call, and the flop is ace 5 deuce, 2 diamonds. We check. He fires a bet of 100, and with an underpair plus backdoors, we're probably not going anywhere right now, so we make the call. Turn is the 9 of clubs, and our opponent shows no sign of slowing down. He puts in a bet of 650, which is quite big considering the size of the pot. I wonder if he was steaming from me showing the jack 9 of clubs earlier, so that could definitely play a part, and I was definitely getting bluff vibes, but I really didn't want to call and then not really know what to do on the river where there's 2 flushes on the board, and like, am I good when they complete? Anyway, I think I have better calls here, so I decide to fold. And unfortunately, I cut the clip off so quickly that I missed the part where he throws 7, 8 of hearts right in my face. Yeah, getting a taste of my own medicine there. Just for funsies, I decide to check whether his 7, 8 of hearts bet on the flop was atrocious or fine, and it turns out it was fine. So, well played by him. So I missed the start of the action in this hand, but basically, under the gun opens to 50, button makes it 350, which is a 7x 3-bet. I'm in the straddle with kings, and I don't want to 4-bet too big because it's already a very big 3-bet, and then 4-betting on top of a very large 3-bet makes your hand look super strong. And at the same time, we're 5k effective. That's between me and the button. So I decide to make it kind of a small 4-bet to 850. Button thinks for a while, but unfortunately folds. Hey, so I thought I'd jump back on here and wrap up the video. So all in all, in the session, we were in for this much and out for this much. So a profit of just over 3 grand, not too shabby considering we didn't really have any big hands. There was one hand I played that I didn't get to record where I had a boat with pocket queens, but it wasn't a huge pot either. So yeah, hopefully the next few sessions will be a little bit more exciting. Also, I don't usually sound this nasally. I'm looking after my friend's kitten and I'm apparently allergic to some cats. Obviously, this is my first vlog. If you have any comments, feedback, advice on some of the spots that I struggle with, I would greatly welcome that. And honestly, video editing is no joke. That took me so long that I don't even know if there'll be a second vlog. But we'll see. Yeah, well, if there is, hope to see you guys then, and thank you for watching.